Hello everyone. Look what I have made for y'all today. This is my fresh rustic peach pie with an all butter crust. I cannot wait to share this recipe with y'all. The ingredients are simple. We're going to be using some flour, some sugar, cinnamon, some light brown sugar, a little bit of nutmeg, some salt, a little bit of raw sugar. We have our fresh peaches, of course, a little bit of lemon, and we have that butter. Well, these are the ingredients for our fresh rustic peach pie. Are you ready? Let's get started. So first we're going to start off making our all butter crust. Our all butter crust, the crust recipe that I have used for years. I just love using my crust recipe. It is really simple. It is 2 cups of flour and a half a cup of flour. Now don't worry y'all, because in the description box below, I'm gonna have a list of all the ingredients you need for the all butter crust, as well as the filling for your fresh peach pie. Now remember, what I always tell you is not just having the recipe, but how you put it together that makes the difference. And hey, if you are new here, welcome, and I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. And if you are a returner, welcome back. I am so glad you decided to visit my channel today. So our pie crust, we have put in our flour, our salt, and our sugar. And then once you put in those ingredients, you want to take a whisk, just like I'm doing, and go around your bowl to make sure that there are no lumps and clumps of flour, as well as you are mixing and incorporating in that sugar and that salt in there. Okay, now next what we're going to do is we're going to use some butter. I'm using unsalted butter, and it does make a difference depending on the type of pie crust you're making, if you're going to use salted or unsalted butter. Okay, and I am using unsalted butter, and it's cold. It is ice cold. I just had taken it out of my refrigerator, so it's nice ice cold, and it's very firm. And so you see, I like to use my bench scraper there, and I go down and I separate the butter into like pads of butter, and I do that with both of my cold, and that's ice cold, sticks of butter. And you just go down like that. You're gonna make little sticks, and you see how I'm just using that bench scraper and going all the way through that butter, because you want those small tiny pieces, as small as you can get them, because we're going to break them down some more. We incorporate them with our flour. So I take my 2 sticks of really cold butter that I've gone on and I've made, small pieces. I'd say about maybe the size of a dime or a little bit smaller, because what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate those pieces of butter into our flour, and we're going to begin to hydrate our flour. And you see what I'm doing? I'm taking my fingers just like that. I'm taking my fingers and I'm squishing the butter is what I'm doing. I'm squishing it and like pressing on it and really blending and moving my fingers, just my fingertips. I'm not using my palms yet. I'm just using the tips of my fingers, because you also don't want to overwarm your butter, okay? So you want to press it so that way you're breaking down those pieces and blending and incorporating them into that flour. That helps to hydrate the flour, and what happens is that butter starts to mix in with that flour, and you're going to get little grainy pieces all through. So you're going to have some smaller pieces, but you don't want anything. Once you start blending that flour and butter together, you don't want anything bigger than about the size of about like a pea, or about the size of a kernel of corn. And by doing this, what it does, it helps you to create those flaky layers that's going to be in your pie crust. Now next we're going to use some cold water, and we want our water ice cold. So I always like to put some ice chips in my water, and I want it ice cold. Now we're going to use anywhere from 4 tablespoons of cold ice water to 6. You don't want to use more than 6 tablespoons. Your dough should be able to come together with about 4, 5, no more than 6 tablespoons of ice cold water. And that's because you don't want to overhydrate your crust, because then it also is going to become tough if you put too much water in, okay? And so that's why you see how I'm taking one hand and I'm squeezing and gathering up my pie dough, and I'm pressing because I'm hydrating. I'm continuing to hydrate the pie dough, and I'm just pressing, and I'm taking all of the dry flour from the bottom of the bowl, and I'm incorporating it with the water and also with that butter that's in there, and I'm just pushing. And you see how it's already gathered and coming together as I'm pushing and pressing. And this is the time in which I'm using now the palm of my hand, and I'm rotating that bowl just like that. You see how I'm rotating the bowl, and I'm pressing and turning it around just like that. And once I have it to this stage, it's ready for me to go on and put it on my silicone pad there and go on and begin to roll it out. And so it's not going to be 100% all together. You're going to finish bringing your dough together on your pad if you're using a silicone pad like I am, or if you're using a cutting board. At this time is when you go on and you finish putting your dough together. And you see how I'm using the palms of my hand, I'm pressing and I'm folding over, and I'm creating those layers. I'm creating those layers of that nice flakiness to go with the pie. So creating the layers, the ice cold water, the ice cold butter, it's all those different things together is what gives you that nice flaky pie crust. And once I've done that, I go on and I separate. I like to separate out because we're going to be doing 2 rustic pies, because this dough is enough dough to make either a double pie crust or either 2 rustic pies, and that's what we're going to do. So I've gone and I've made my little circles. I'm going to use just a little bit of flour, and I'm going to make discs, just flattened discs, and I'm just going to roll just like that. And what I also like to do is anytime that you're going to have some creases, and anytime that you're going to have the creases that are going to be around the edge of your dough, you want to try to firm and smooth those out as best as you can, because what will tend to happen is this, guys. If you have little edges that are all kind of cracked, once you go to roll out your dough, the cracks will continue, and those cracks will start to get larger and bigger in your pie crust as you're rolling them out. So to avoid that, you see what I'm doing with my thumb there? To avoid that, this is what you want to do. You want to go on and take your thumb, and I just press and try to make it as smooth as possible all around the edges. Now this one was a little bit bigger than the other one, so I took some of that dough and go on and I put it with the other piece of dough that I have, my other disc there. But you see how I'm using my thumb? I'm just using my thumb, and I just lay my hand on top and just using my thumb, and I just go around the edge just like that, because we want to try to smooth out any type of little cracks or crevices that we have right there. Because if we don't, like I said, once you start to roll out your dough, what will happen is those little cracks will get bigger, and they'll start to go all throughout your pie crust. And so to avoid that issue, this is what you want to do. Now once you're done forming your pie crust, you want to go on and either use a plastic bag or freezer bag, or either saran wrap. Either of those things are fine. You want to go on and seal it up really good and refrigerate your pie dough. You want to refrigerate your pie dough for 1 hour. Now once our dough has refrigerated for 1 hour, then we're going to go on and roll it out, okay? And so while I'm rolling out this one piece, I like to go on and put my other piece back in the refrigerator. You're going to just make a nice round disc and go all around the edges, and just keep pressing and go around the edges and roll out your pie crust. Now when you're making your pie crust and you're rolling it out, you want to try to have it be as round as possible. But if it's not, don't worry about it, because remember, this is a rustic peach pie. Also, with your thickness, you want your thickness to be about, if you had 2 quarters or either 2 nickels and you stack them one on top of each other, if you had 2 quarters and you did that, that thickness of 2 quarters stacked together, that's the thickness that you're looking for with your pie crust. You don't want it any thinner than that, because then it's not going to hold up as nicely as you want to. And if it's too much thicker than that, then it's not going to cook all the way through. Okay, it won't bake all the way through. And so once I've got it rolled out, I like to use my rolling pin and gently just rolling, because we're going to transfer our pie crust. We're transferring it over to this baking sheet, and on my baking sheet I have lined it with some parchment paper. And we like to do that because it does definitely help with cleanup, but then it's also nice because your pie won't stick or anything. You won't have any problems with having that pie crust and cooking your rustic pie right on that parchment paper. And then I go on and I roll out my second pie crust just like I did the first, and I roll it on my rolling pin, and I'm going to situate it on that parchment paper right next to the first pie crust, just like that. Okay guys, now it's time for us to work on our peaches for our pie filling. Now I'm using peaches that are about the size of a baseball. Now there are some peaches that you're going to use that may even be the size of, say, like a softball. You're going to need 6 cups of fresh peaches, and you want to peel them as well as cut them away from the seed. Now when you are slicing your peaches, you want your peaches to be about a half of an inch thick. You don't want them too thin, and you definitely don't want them too thick, because you do want your peaches to bake through, and so you want them maybe about a half an inch thick is how you want to do it. And just go on and I just cut them right into my bowl just like that. And also guys, if you are working with very juicy peaches, okay, if you're working with very juicy peaches and they're nice and ripe, a lot of juice is already coming off of them, you're going to want to double the flour that we are going to put in our peach mixture for our pie. But don't worry, in the description box below, I'm going to have a little side note stating that you want to double the flour if you're using some very juicy, very soft peaches. So that way, that extra flour will really help to just thicken up those juices. Now once we've got our peaches all nice and cut up, and we're using 6 cups of those fresh peaches, we're going to add in our sugar. And we're using a half a cup of light brown sugar, a 1/4 a cup of granulated sugar. We used a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and we used 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And if you don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon measure, you can just go on and put in a pinch of nutmeg will do. Now to our mixture, we're also going to add in some flour, and we added in there 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and we're also going to put in some fresh squeezed lemon juice, and we're using 1 tablespoon of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And that fresh squeezed lemon juice really just helps to balance out some of that sweetness, as well as it just adds to that brightness of those fresh peaches. You want to make sure that you give your peaches a good stir, so that way all of the cinnamon, the brown sugar, and that flour that we put in there just gets distributed amongst all of those nice fresh peaches we have. Now we're going to build our rustic peach pie. I like to use my measuring cup and scoop the peaches in like that, so I can kind of get a visual as to about how many peaches that I'm putting in each of the rustic pie shells. And the reason why this is a rustic peach pie, or it's a rustic pie, is because we're not using a pie tin or a pie plate to which to put the pie in. And so we're just kind of free forming it when it comes to our crust. And you just want to pull it up on the sides like that. And I just kind of tuck it, just kind of fold, bend and tuck, just like that. And you're just going to kind of layer it and just layer the one piece over the next. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because this is a rustic pie. And so it's just that old-fashioned rustic pie. And we do it just like that. And I do the same thing for the other pie as well. Now in the bottom of your bowl, you're probably going to have a little bit of juice that's going to be left in the bottom of the bowl. Be sure to add that in to your rustic pie. Don't leave any of those good juices in that bowl, okay? Now while we are building our rustic pie, I have my oven. My oven is preheating on 400 degrees. And when we put our rustic pie in the oven, we're going to start off at that 400 degrees, and then we're going to go on and lower it to 375. So you want to have your oven preheating on 400 degrees. Once you put your pies in, go on and lower it to 375. And our pies are going to cook at that 375 for anywhere from 45 minutes up to an hour and 5 minutes. And that's just kind of depending on your oven, but you just want to go on and cook it and bake it until it gets golden brown on top. You don't want to over bake it, because then the bottom will burn. All right, and I'm just folding the dough onto itself just like that, and I'm just kind of pleating it a little bit and just kind of folding it over like that. And now we're going to add some butter, and we're going to add a tablespoon of butter to each pie. And you're just going to cut up the pieces like I'm doing there and add that in. And that just helps to add to the richness of that juice that's going to come off of our pie. Now we're going to do an egg wash. And what that egg wash is just one egg that I've beaten up and I've put about a tablespoon of water. I'm going to use my pastry brush that I have right there and go all around the top. You do not want to do the center of the pie, just around the sides where your crust is, just the crust only. Okay, and then I'm going to use a little bit of this raw sugar, and what that egg wash helps to make it nice and glossy and beautiful looking. And then that raw sugar just makes that nice sweet little crunch, that little topping that's going to be all around the edges. Now if you don't have raw sugar, you can use regular granulated sugar. That'll work nicely as well. Now once we've done that, our rustic pie is ready for the oven. Well, all right guys, wow, look at our pies. Well, our peach pies have baked in our oven for 50 minutes. They are a nice golden brown. And then once they come out of the oven, y'all, you do want to let them sit and cool off for about 25 to 30 minutes. It's gonna be tough, y'all, but you gotta let it cool off just so that way that juice can finish just thickening up and just have a chance to kind of cool down. Well, we have cut into our pie, and let's see what things are looking like. Look at that nice rich juice that have come off those fresh peaches. Look at that pie crust. Oh my goodness. There is something just so satisfying about baking from scratch. This bite is y'all's. This is your first bite. You ready for it? Come on now. Let me try it. Oh my goodness. That is so good. Those peaches, they've just got that nice glisten to them. Look at that nice brown sugar. All those spices, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, that little sprinkle of that raw sugar that we put on top right there. That little extra crunch factor. Well, we have done it, y'all. Well, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, what are you waiting for? Go on and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love and give it a thumbs up. And click that share button and share this video with the friend or family. Well, that is it for me today, guys. And remember, it is always good when Devon is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.